This is Carol from STS. This is the ACSD user group call for May 18th. And here is Hank. He's getting big. I think he's probably over 25 pounds right now, and he's just under 4 months. He's 15 weeks, so just about 4 months. He's doing good, making lots of friends at the park. He talks to everybody. All right, on the line with me today from STS, I have Leanne Jones, Melinda Offer, Sydney Clinton, and Addie Dolan. And then our IQVIA team, we have Jean, Joe, Melanie, Michelle, and Steve. So thanks everybody for joining, and go through the STS updates, important dates, updates, IQVIA updates, education. Melinda's going to present some education, so get your polling fingers ready for renal failure. And then I'm going to go over the outcomes overview, report overview. First, I just want to start off with the poll, and let me see if I can do this here. This is just for AQO, and just curious to see if we can get a count if you're planning to attend in person, or if you plan to only do a virtual component, or where you're at right now with picking. And I just want to make known that the virtual component will not be a live virtual component. It will be recording. So just keep that in mind as you're planning for AQO. More information will come on that, but that's just where we're at right now, is that it will not be live streamed. It will be more of a recording type thing. Yeah, we prefer live virtual too, but we're not able to do it. It requires too many resources. I hear you, Heidi. The AQO for Allah, the AQO is scheduled for I believe it's the last week in October, the 25th through 27th, or whatever that Wednesday through Friday is. Okay, I'm going to end the polling here. So thanks here are the results. And I'm just going to we don't have pricing available yet. I was just trying to see. Oh, what kind of dog is he? That's a good question. I'd like to talk about my dog for a second. He's, I got his DNA results back, and he is half Doberman, 50% Doberman, and then he has about a quarter of him is Hound, and then a mix of other things. Okay. Please be sure, I'm going to shut down the chat box. Please be sure to put your questions into the Q&A so we can keep track of them. And then we're going to go into Q&A after outcome report overview. Here are the important dates from STS. May 18th is today for the user group call. May 27th, Harvest 2 closes. That is OR dates through March 31st, 2022. Opt-out is June 1st. That's also the same day as our monthly webinar for June. June 9th is our new data managers webinar at 2 p.m. Central. If you're newer to the database, you've never attended one of these, highly recommend that you join us. If you are seasoned and you would still like to join us, we would love to have you, always learning something new, and Melinda will provide some great education, some great basic education on the database. June 15th is the adult cardiac user group call at 2 p.m. Central Time. 2022 harvest dates have not changed, just sharing them with you. And then STS updates, Harvest 1 data, OR dates through December 31st, 2021 have been posted. They are available in the IQVIA platform. That is the star rating period, star rating harvest. May training manual has been posted. The STS, if you need to update contact information, please email stsdb@sts.org for contact updates. And then AQO abstract submission will be opening in May, early June. So if you have something that, some type of QI project that you've been doing at your hospital using STS data, or anything using STS data that you think would be interesting to share, please submit an abstract. We had a few, or last year we had, I think it was Patty Toyer gave a wonderful presentation on abstract submission, and we'll see if she can come back again and provide that, or I'll find that link for the next webinar. Probably I'll find the link for the next webinar and share it with you all if you're wanting to submit an abstract. That was a really great review of how to do one for those who may not be familiar with it, the abstract process. And now I'm going to hand it over to Joe Brower from IQVIA for the IQVIA update. Joe.
Thank you very much, Carol. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Just a few updates from us today. A couple items that were released last weekend on May 12th. If I could get the next slide. Thank you. So some updates for the risk-adjusted dashboard report. This is your harvest report. In regard to the exporting and printing options, STS 8347. Updates were made to improve the user friendliness of the export report option for the risk adjusted dashboard. So when you click on the export report button, you'll see a message that reads preparing report for printing. The print report button will appear once the report is ready to be exported to PDF. So that just makes things a little bit clearer. So when you click that button, you'll kind of have a better idea of what's going on behind the scenes. And you'll also be better aware of when your report is ready for you to actually download into the PDF. And then STS 8307, the PDF export was displaying the anesthesia section with the STS column on a separate page. So that's now been corrected. And so the STS column will appear on the same page as the My Site columns. And one other reminder, I think we brought this up on our last webinar, but just for those who are not aware, we did reopen STS 8072 in regard to the beta blockers within 24 hours on the risk-adjusted dashboard report benchmarks, not calculating correctly. The AEP calculation is including cases that should be excluded. So we are still looking into that, and we will be communicating out to you more information as soon as we have that available. There's also one issue related to the DCRI analysis. The composite results failed to prescribe patient exclusions are still appearing within the drill down. So note that DCRI has confirmed that the participant level results are correct. The problem only lies within the drill down. And that issue will appear for any Harvest 1 2022 and earlier harvests. However, DCRI has advised that this will be corrected when the Harvest 2 2022 results are deployed. And that's all of our updates for today. The usual reminders to please reach out to us if you're looking for updates on tickets you may have already submitted. And we will be reviewing any items that have been submitted by you all and present those on our next webinar.
Great, thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
And now this is our support plan. I'm going to hand it over to Melinda for renal failure education. Melinda, AKA Melissa.
Hi, Carol. Hi, everybody. So we've had a couple of questions about renal failure lately in the mailbox. So I thought we'd take this time to review the definitions and go through some scenarios for renal failure. So just first of all, the definition. So renal failure is determined by one of the three methods below. So either you have an increase in your serum creatinine level times 3 from the baseline creatinine, or you have a serum creatinine greater than 4 with at least a 0.5 milligram per deciliter rise from the pre-creatinine level, your baseline, or you have a new requirement for dialysis postoperatively. So we're going to work through some scenarios, and I think after the scenarios, hopefully you'll have a good understanding of this. So I have a patient that has a pre-op creatinine of 0.8 and the highest post-op creatinine of 2.4. This is exactly 3 times greater. So do I code yes to post-op renal failure? I wasn't sure if it was greater than or equal to 3 times the pre-baseline. So the answers are A, code no to post-op renal failure, B, code yes to post-op renal failure, or C, I'm not sure, help.
Yeah, the help had an exclamation. It should be read a little bit more excitingly.
Help, help!
Exactly. Help!
Sorry. Melinda's brain needs help these days. The mailbox is worrying me to death these days.
Yeah, it's getting close to harvest close. I'm sure it's crazy. Okay, looks like we have let it run for about 5 more seconds here. So get your votes in if you haven't. We're at about 1. Okay, I'm closing the poll. Ready?
Ready.
There you go.
So what do we got here? So 86% of the people say, yes, this is post-op renal failure. And that is the correct answer, because if the peak post-op creatinine, which is sequence 6555, is greater than or equal to 3 times the last creatinine level in sequence 605, which is your baseline pre-op creatinine, then you code renal failure. Okay.
Okay.
We have another question. If a patient has a pre-op diagnosis of end-stage renal disease, status post-renal transplant, does this exclude them from the post-op renal failure event? The patient's pre-op creatinine was 1.24. The post-op highest creatinine was 4.91, not on pre-op dialysis. So A, yes, the status post-renal transplant does exclude them from post-op renal failure. I'm going to code no to post-op renal failure. Or B, no, the status post-renal transplant does not exclude them from the post-op renal failure. For this case, I would code yes to post-op renal failure.
There's also an option C. I don't know if you can see the poll.
Sorry, I just don't know. I'm trying to be more dramatic. Please help me.
Very good. That's funny. I almost want to break out my calculator to see if the creatinine is. I wonder if people are doing that right now, breaking out their
I don't know.
calculators times in that 1.24 by 3.
Yeah, but there's another key in it. It's even more important than that 3 times the 1.24.
Okay, I'm going to end it here. It looks like we got some good votes in. There you go.
So we've got 86% of the people got the answer right. No, the status post-renal transplant does not exclude the patient from the renal failure metric. Okay, so let's go through this. The patient was not on dialysis pre-op, okay? And the patient's pre-op creatinine was not equal to or greater than 4. So the patient will not be excluded from the post-op renal failure metric. Those are your 2 exclusions right there. So if you're on dialysis pre-op, or if your baseline creatinine is greater or equal to 4. Secondly, the post-op creatinine in this scenario was greater than 4. It also had at least a 0.5 rise from the pre-op creatinine. So what does that mean? Well, the pre-op creatinine was 1.24. The post-op creatinine was 4.91. We had a pretty significant rise. I mean, if you take 4.91 minus 1.24, that's definitely higher than a 0.5 rise from your baseline. And a new requirement for dialysis post-op. But this patient
hit
did
it
not.
all around. They didn't have it right.
Yeah, they didn't, and did not require dialysis post-op. So this patient definitely is renal failure. So no exclusions. Creatinine was over 4. And that's the real key here. Was over 4, and he had at least a 0.5 rise from the pre-op creatinine.
Okay. And this one says, this site says that and did require dialysis post-op, but I think
Oh, yeah, maybe. And not on. Oh,
Yeah.
and this patient also got dialysis post-op. So that's definitely a shoe-in too. Wasn't on dialysis pre-op, got dialysis post-op.
Okay, very good.
Question number 3. Patient has a history of chronic kidney disease and the base creatinine is 2.34. The post-peak creatinine is 4.03. So 3 times 2.34 equals 7.02. However, the post-op creatinine is greater than 4. Do I code this as renal failure? So A, code no to renal failure. B, code yes to renal failure, or not sure. I'm going to submit this question to Melinda in the mailbox. This was a question I actually submitted. I can't remember who submitted this, but this is an actual question. All my questions are usually actual questions.
Okay, let's see where we're at. I didn't have any dramatic punctuation in that last answer for you.
Yeah, I thought you were going to have me say something like, "Oh Lord, help me," something like
Lordy,
that.
Lord. Yeah, next time I'm gonna have to come up with some really good ones. I'm gonna let it run for just a few more seconds here. Get your votes in, folks. Here you go, Melinda.
Okay, so 70% of the people got the correct answer that yes, this is renal failure. So if you break this down, one of the indicators for renal failure is a serum creatinine greater than 4 with at least a 0.3 rise. Okay. So if your pre-op creatinine was 3.6 and your highest post-op creatinine rises 0.5 or greater and is over 4, then that is coded as renal failure. So 3.6 plus 0.5 equals 4.1, which equals renal failure. In that first question, the data manager had tried to, she was trying to add up the creatinines and it was over 7. Well, of course, we know that's renal failure. But the key here in this particular situation is that it was over 4. The post-op was over 4, and there was a 0.5 rise from your baseline. Okay. I think we have one more. Okay, here we go. If the pre-op creatinine level is 0.76 and the highest post-op creatinine was 2.58, but on discharge, the creatinine returned to almost normal at 0.78, does this count as post-op renal failure? So A is no, this is not renal failure, or B, yes, this is renal failure. Oh, not sure. This is kind of a tricky one.
Tricky, Melinda.
I don't make these up.
I know.
They are tricky. I get lots of tricky questions in the mailbox.
All right, I'm gonna end the poll here.
Okay, so let's see what we got here. So 72% of the people who answered said, yes, this is renal failure, and this is renal failure because what we're looking at, we're not looking at the discharge creatinine. We're looking at the peak creatinine. So if your peak post-op creatinine, which is sequence 6555, is greater than or equal to 3 times the last creatinine level pre-op, which is sequence 605, then you're going to code renal failure. It's not based on your discharge creatinine. It's based on your peak post-op creatinine. That's all I got, I think. Hoping this was a good review. I hope this was a good review for those of you who are having difficulty with this element.
I think it was really good. One question here. What if your creatinine is greater than 4 prior to surgery and you're not a dialysis patient?
Well, I'm assuming that they're asking that for an exclusion. If your baseline creatinine is greater to or equal than 4 pre-op, then you are excluded from the renal failure metric and you do not code no to post-op renal failure for those patients.
Okay, and thank you for the review. Positive feedback, Melinda. Let me see one. I thought I saw one more question in here, and then I'm going to go to the reports.
There's one here. Yeah.
From anonymous attendee.
Yeah.
Mysterious attendee, it should say. What if pre-op labs were not completed within 30 days pre-op and patient had an elevated creatinine of 3.65 post-op? The closest pre-op creatinine was 0.65, but it was 60 days prior to surgery.
Well, we can't use the 60 days prior to surgery lab. So in this particular situation, I don't think you'd be able to analyze it because that your pre-op lab creatinine would be blank. Any other comments, Carol?
No, I don't have anything. The creatinine has to be within 30 days pre-op.
Yeah.
The pre-op one. So
I'm surprised the anesthesia didn't draw a point of care testing the morning of surgery in a situation like that. You'd think that they'd want to know what that pre-op creatinine was.
Yeah. Let me see if there's any other ones in here. Okay, I don't see any other.
Annette wants to see the last renal scenario again. She doesn't ask me why. She just wants to see it.
Okay, there it is. And then can you please repeat the question number 3? I thought it read it as baseline creatinine of 2.34, not 3.6.
I thought it did too, Carol, and I think that might have been a typo.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that was a typo.
Maybe you just use it for, maybe it was just an example.
It's
That's all right.
perhaps.
Either way, the patient is still.
Either way, the concept is still the same because there was a 0.5 rise and it was
Yeah.
over 4. And in the example, the slide previous, the same thing. I mean, 2.34 times 3 is 7.2. That's definitely renal failure. But the key here is the creatinine, the peak post creatinine was 4.03. So it's over 4. And there's definitely more than a 0.5 rise from 2.34 because 2.34 times plus 0.5 is only 2 point something. So definitely there's greater than that rise. So regardless, it's renal failure.
Yeah, you're just showing that the 3 times doesn't necessarily apply to this one, but it
doesn't.
does, but it becomes renal failure because it's greater than 4, and the rise from 2.34 to 4.02 is greater than 0.5, is 0.5 or greater.
Exactly.
Can you please repeat what you said about the pre-op level over 4.0 without dialysis? Is this an exclusion?
It is. Those patients that have a baseline with sequence 655, your
Mhm.
baseline creatinine is 4 or greater. Those patients are excluded from the renal failure metric. So post-op, you would code no to renal failure because they're
Yeah.
excluded from the metric.
Let me pull that up because there's another question that says, so if it's greater than 4, they will be excluded even if they have new dialysis.
Yeah,
We
that's
review-
true. It is
Yeah,
true because they're excluded because technically they have pre-op renal failure with a creatinine of 4 or greater.
Yeah, that's right. And it's in the training manual. Melinda provided nice clarification on that.
What was that sequence number?
Let me see.
6870 or something.
I think that's right.
That'll get us close.
Yeah, that's right.
There we go. And there's, yeah, it's right there.
So patients with a pre-op creatinine of equal to or greater than 4 who develop post-op renal failure will be excluded from the risk-adjusted renal failure metric since the pre-op creatinine is greater than 4.0. So you should really code this question as post-op renal failure for these patients. Code that answer as no, because they're not a new post-op renal failure patient because they had it preoperatively. So they can't be new if they had it preoperative.
Right.
Okay.
That's all of the renal failure, I think. Okay, wait a minute. Let's see. So if you have no pre-op creatinine, how do you answer the question? Base it on the post-op peak. You can't really answer the question, Marina. That's what I'm saying. If you don't have a pre-op creatinine, I mean, you can answer the question if the patient goes on dialysis. For sure, you'd know for sure that the patient had a new requirement for dialysis. So if that happened, you could say yes to renal failure. But I don't think there would be a way to answer it just based on the lab results because you have no pre-op lab to compare your post-op peak lab with.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh God, there's another one. Let's see.
Regarding no pre-op creatinine, there's usually a consult from nephrology and they might give you an idea if the patient has a history to help with that. That's true.
That's true.
Can you repeat the question you did on the pre-op of 4 but no dialysis? I think you covered that before Cheryl had entered that, or after she had entered that question. So pre-op creatinine of 0.76 3 times would be 2.28. Yes.
0.6. I've added up.
Mhm. Okay. I think that was right. Can you tell us, how about this one, Melinda? Can you tell us what labs to use if there are multiple labs within 30 days?
You use the lab closest to OR entry. Closest to OR entry for sequence 655.
And I think that's all in the, 650.
650, maybe. Maybe it's 665. 655. I have to look it up.
I don't know. Okay, let's see real quick here. I'll look it up for you. Create 605.
605.
You're close.
Close.
Closest to the date and time prior to surgery, but prior to anesthetic management, induction area, or operating room. Okay, and then there's more information about lab values up above, restating the 30-day limit on them, unless it's otherwise specified. Like for hemoglobin A1C, it's a little bit different. And I wanted to show 6880 on here. The question is about what if the patient expires?
Then you answer no. The patient did not require dialysis after discharge.
Well, you're not even, if the patient expires after OR, you would have to enter all of these. But if the patient died in the OR, you wouldn't even be able to answer these. But for those patients that would die after surgery, you just, I think it's in the training manual too to code no, right? Is that right, Melinda?
I believe so. If not, I've answered that question a lot. The patient is not, I mean, they're discharged, but they're not discharged home. And that's the intent of this question. So if they expired, then just answer no, they did not require. Basically what it's asking you, did they require dialysis after discharge at home, basically, when they were discharged from the hospital? So the answer would be no.
I'm going to go through the rest of the questions. I don't know. We're getting a lot of questions in. And
I know there's always a lot of these questions.
And I really want to go through the report overview. So how about we do, I don't know if everybody can raise their hand or not, but maybe put in the chat box if you'd like me to continue with these questions, or just to start going over the report overview for about the next 20 minutes and then just do questions. I open the chat box back up. Anybody?
And some of these questions I don't understand. I'm reading through them, exactly what they're asking me.
Okay.
Report overview, questions.
Yeah.
Report. Yeah.
I think we're going to do the report overview. I'll spend about 20 minutes on the report overview, and then we'll come back to questions and get through what we have time for. So okay. So I'm going to go over here. So Harvest 1 report was released. Let's see, I forget the day it was released, on May 9th. We sent notification out, I think, around that day, a couple days after, just after it was updated, or we made sure that the reports were working well. So I'm going to walk through this report. If your site opted out, or if your site opted out or you did not submit any data with the new OR dates for this time frame, so it would have been October 1st through December 31st of 2021 would have been the new OR dates that were to be included for Harvest 1. If you did not submit any of those cases, you would have been excluded from analysis. So we're going to this report. It's been taking a little bit to load. IQVIA is looking into it to check on the load time. Great overview. I fill this time with compliments to Melinda on a great overview for the renal failure section and fun questions. So wait until this participant number loads. I don't know if that you're all seeing this okay, but once your participant number loads, then it's okay to advance. It means that all of these have loaded. So if you click on it too soon, the data won't be there. So just wait for this number to load. So the first thing that is new in the Harvest One report is going to be of course, your updated star ratings. It's quality ratings, details, rating trends. Rating trends is only available right now for the cabbage composite. This is also what was available only with DCRI when we provided trends to sites in 2019 and prior. So let's go to the quality ratings. This is going to be, I'm just going to use cabbage for all of our walkthroughs. On here, you'll see your, this is your, oh, sorry for the scrolling. This is your cabbage composite. This is the domain, your site's rating. So for the domain, the overall, this would be your morbidity and mortality. So remember that includes everything that goes into the cabbage composite. Let me show you where to find that. Under qualities and ratings, performance measures, your cabbage composite's the first one listed here. And this is everything that makes up the cabbage composite. So your preoperative medications, postoperative medications, discharge medications, your internal mammary use, operative mortality, and then the 5 major morbidity outcomes are all used in the cabbage composite. So that's your overall score. Then you have separate scores for the absence, for mortality, for morbidity, for the internal mammary use, and for the medications, both the pre-op and the discharge medications. Your star rating, it's important to note, one thing I'll say here is that a lot of sites, I get quite a few questions from sites who have 100% IMA usage, and they don't receive 3 stars. You can see this site had a 98.14%. They only received 1 star. This measure for the IMA usage is folks or the surgeons are very good about using the internal mammary as necessary to meet the specifications of this measure. And it's because everybody's doing it, it's very difficult to achieve a 3-star rating. So even if you have 100%, there are a few things that other than adhere, other than the usage of it, the time of usage, 100%. There are other things that play into the determination of what star rating you received. And in the national report overview posted on the IQVIA library, under the resource section, you'll find the national report overview. On the second to last page, on the last page, it will go over how the star ratings are calculated for internal mammary and why sites who have 100% adherence to the measure do not receive 3 stars, what factors into that. So you see your confidence interval here, and then the STS score, as you can see, like I said, it's very high, 99.43. So everybody within STS is performing. This is the median, 99.43. The min max is here, so 88.51 is the lowest site, 99.99. Now we know that we have sites that perform this 100% of the time. You'll see that the STS high is 99.99. This is related to analytics, and it will never show you 100 here. That's just how analytics are performed, and it has to do with how it's modeled. More information on this is within the report overview, so highly recommend that you read that. So you have your score. You have the 95% confidence interval. So we're 95% certain that this is your score. However, it can range from this value to this value. And I'll scroll down here and I'll show you what that looks like on a graph. Then we have the STS scores. We have the STS score. We have the min-max ranges for STS. We have the 10th, 50th, and 90th percentile. As you can see, when you go up the 10th percentile, so 10% of the sites performed at 98 point. This is the, if you put this values, 88.51, 99.99, and you broke it up into percentiles, right? You broke it up into tenths, you would see that this 98.7 is the lower end. So 10% fell below that line. At the 50th percentile is 99.67. So you can see 50th percentile right in the middle, we're already at 99% usage. And then the 90th percentile is 99.91. So right there. Same thing, medications have a wider range though. So when you scroll down, you see the, remember you can zoom these out, zoom these in. We said this site was a 1-star for internal mammary usage, right? They had a 97.12. Their confidence interval was 96.18 to 97.92. The STS score was 94.65. 90th percentile and the ranges for STS are here. So when we scroll down to internal mammary use, this is the site's score, right? The dark blue box here, that's their confidence interval. This is the site score, is this black line. The STS score, let's see if it'll, let's see, of 99.43. Was I looking at the wrong one? Oh yeah, I was looking, sorry. I was still looking at the wrong one. Hold on. Please hold. The STS score of 99.43. That doesn't seem to make sense. Hey, Melanie, are you there?
I'm here.
Am I reading that wrong?
No, that is showing you a different. I will take a look at that with the team.
Okay.
99.43, right? I'm just making sure that I'm seeing.
Yeah, it says 99.43. It looks like this this score is 94.
Wait. It scrolled. Do you see how there's a little scroll in that top? Sorry, go back up. Scroll it. Yeah, it was not aligned.
Oh.
You see that? Yeah.
Oh,
It's not,
we gotta
yeah,
fix.
it's not frozen. Yeah, it's not frozen. So now it's correct. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
aligned.
but will you check that?
99.4. Yeah, that's
I
supposed to be
almost had a heart
frozen.
attack. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, it's not
Okay.
supposed to have a scroll in that. Yeah,
In that box?
it's in that box, exactly. But it is 99.43 for use of IMA.
Okay.
Okay,
So
but I'll take a
STS
look at
score
the
is,
scroll.
yeah, STS score, thank you. STS score is 99.43. So when we go down here to the internal mammary, here's the STS score. The site score with the 95% confidence interval is here. STS scores to the left of their confidence interval, which would mean that their STS score does not fall within the site's achieved range. Because STS score is higher or to the left of the site score, that would make the STS score higher than the site's within the site score and range, giving the site a 1-star. If the site's score, as you can see in medications, the site score is higher than the STS score. This is the site range, the site score is the black line, the STS score is to the right of that. The site is going to be a 3-star in medication. So you look at your confidence interval, and if the STS score falls inside of your confidence interval, to the left or to the right is how you can see where your what your score how your star rating looks in a different view. That really scared me, everybody. I just want to let you know I think my heart stopped. Okay, so this is the cabbage composite. Remember to hit the home button. It'll just take you right back to, so it doesn't have to reload. And then we're going to go into the quality ratings details. This is going to be your drill down, pretty straightforward information. This is your eligible cases. So this is going to be eligible cases for all of 2019, all of 2020, all of 2021, your mortality case, and then your count is here. Again, click on it and you could just drill, it will open up the files down here that fall, those 19 files that are going to show you who were your mortalities were, internal mammary failures, and then your medications here. So just additional information, some drill down information to show the cases that caused you to achieve the score that you achieved. The rating trends are just CABG trends for right now. We are in talks with adding the other composites, but this is what STS provided in the DCRI report before. One thing I want to point out here is you'll notice these timeframes look a little wonky. We go from, timeframe ending June 21st, 2021, 2019, 2021. So IQVIA has this as a known issue, and they will be reordering these to be sequential, and that is coming soon. So just pay attention to these dates up here if you're showing this information to your surgeons or to your to any of your quality care team members, that they're aware that it's out of order. And okay, and we're going to get into the NQF reporting. One thing I'm going to say before we get started is that some of these numbers are going to be slightly different. The NQF reporting numbers will be slightly different than your risk adjusted numbers due to the populations that are included in each of these measures. That's all the information I have to share about what's making these populations different. That comes from the Analytics Center, but there is more information in the National Report Overview, so make sure that you review that. CABG process measures. This is going to be things that not outcomes, but that show that you're treating the patient according to standards of the surgeons that they have all agreed upon in various directions, manuscripts, and things like that. So pre-op beta blocker, internal mammary, discharge, antiplatelet usage, beta blockers, and anti-lipid therapy. You have your eligible population. You will see that these numbers differ sometimes. So the patients who were eligible for pre-op beta blocker, this is going to exclude your patients who were contraindicated. Internal mammary usage, this has some exclusions on it, like redo cabbages, STS approved exclusions, subclavian stenosis, things like that. More information is, you can find more information on that NQF measure document that we have posted. I'll show you where to find that. Under this NQF endorsed measures, you'll find the exclusion criteria that are used for all of these. And then we have, so that's why these counts are slightly different. The discharge antiplatelet medication, beta blocker therapy, again, this could be, counts could be different because of contraindication. You have your, so you're eligible, you have your score, where you scored at your 95% confidence interval. So we're 95% confident that your score falls somewhere in between here, and we think it's here. Percentile, what your percentile is. So I've had to explain this a few times, so it's probably worth going over. So this site, their pre-op beta blocker score is 97.8%. The STS scores range from 30.77 to 100. The 97.8% is going to fall someplace in between the 10th and 50th percent, right? 10th percent is 87.23, 50th percent is 98.35. The site score is 97.80, so it's going to be less than the 50th percentile. So this site is performing a little bit below the 50th percentile of other sites. If they were performing higher or being more compliant with this, they would fall someplace up here. So it's not where you're, so I hope that makes sense. So if we look at internal mammary use, we see, now remember I said so 90th percentile, the score is 100%. That's what the 90th percentile is. So there's a whole bunch of patients that fall between the 90th and 100, or a whole bunch of sites that fall between the 90th and 100th percentile, but just at the 90th percentile, we're already at 100%. So for the internal mammary use, this participant score was 98.01. Confidence interval is here, but pretty certain that this is their score. And then you see the STS score is 99.40. The STS range is 86.05% to 100%. And here are the 10th, 50th, and 90th percentiles. That site was 98.01. The 10th percentile is 98.32. The site fell below that, so they're going to be below 10th percent. They have a 7.5% percentile. So they're somewhere down here, right? If we look at this on a range. And this is just additional. Let's see if I can make this. Some of these are good, but some of them are, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with the screen. Is it because I clicked on something up here? Oh yeah, that's why. So when I click on something up here, it highlighted it for me, but let's see if I can unclick it. So it
Click on
highlighted
the-
the discharge. Oh, go ahead, Melanie.
I was going to say to click in that white space over to the right-hand side to see if it'll deselect. No, not on the report, just in the, let's see if it'll.
No.
Okay, scroll up a little bit. Okay. Are you trying to just to deselect,
I'm
right?
clicking, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when we go down here, you can see that I think let's see if I can look at beta blockers and see how that looks. The reason it looks a little wonky is because the range is so wide for this, right? So if you see the range is 30.77% compliance all the way to 100% compliance. So and these ranges are 0 to 100, 0 to 100. So it's very wide. Maybe if we look at internal mammary, that's going to be a little bit easier to view. So here's the range, the min-max range are the light blue values. So 100% down, I don't know if it's going to tell me exactly, but down to about 86% is what it said above. The site score is this dark blue box with the 95% confidence interval. The STS score is here. The site, like we said before, the site score is below the STS score. So they're a one-star program, but this is just a different way to view the same information from up here. If you wanted to see, oh, now when I clicked on that, the highlighting went away. If you want to see details, so let's say, I think if I click on this, if I click on one of the rows and I hit see detail, I think it would give me.
It just takes a little bit to load. Yeah, because there's so
it'll
many.
give me the cases that fall into this, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm not going to load and take the time to load it, but it would show you the cases that fell into this preoperative beta blocker measure for the isolated CABG procedures. Going back to the outcomes measures, these are things like your infections, anything that occurs post-operatively other than the medication, giving the medication like renal failure, surgical re-exploration, stroke, or prolonged ventilation. Your eligible population, your estimated odds ratios. Odd ratios are a little bit different than what we use in are a little bit different than the observed to expected rates. Both are used in statistical analysis and outcomes measuring. More information for odds ratios and observed to expected are provided in the report overview. I suggest that you read that so you can understand that a little bit better. Essentially what odds ratio is saying is that out of performing something so many times, how likely it is it for an event to happen. So for this site, deep sternal infection, they've had eligible procedures of 1,389. Their odds ratio is 1.96. The confidence interval on that odds ratio, 95% confidence interval, is 1.04 to 3.70. An odds ratio of 1 means that there's out of all the times that it occurs, it's likely that it would occur the normal, what's an expected amount of time, which is considered an odds ratio of 1. The site's percentile is 6.5%. The observed rate is 0.65. And then we get into the STS. This is the STS is always going to have an estimated odds ratio of 1. 1 means that it's performing as expected, right? So you have two things. You have a coin, and it's expected that you flip it one time, you're going to get a heads, and the next time you're going to get a tail. That would show an odds ratio of 1, right? read the report overview, it really does have great information. So the STS min max count or odds ratio values were 0.43. So less than 1 is performing much better than what is expected. Odds ratio of 1 is performing as expected, and odds ratio of 7.85 is much higher than expected. This site had an odds ratio of 1.96, which is higher than the middle of the road or what the STS says is normal. And it is, and we can look here. So as I said, an odds ratio of 1.0, that is considered to be as expected. That's what you would consider to be performing as expected. If you get higher than that, towards this end, if you get higher than that, you're performing less than expected. And if you get better than the 1, you're performing worse than expected. The site has an odds ratio of 1.96. They're going to be somewhere less than the 10th percentile for STS, or less than the 10th, I guess it's percentile for the STS. Right, 1.96 is worse than 1.76 when we're talking about odds ratio. So there's someplace over here. So they had a little bit, they had deep sternal wounds occur more often than what STS risk prediction said should have occurred. So they're performing worse than expected. The range of 0.43, this is going to be the best number that is available for this analytic period. It's probably going to be, down here at the 100th percentile. And this is performing much better. So if estimated odds ratio of 1.0 is performing as expected, this site would have had patients, whoever the site is that scored a 0.43, would have patients that are probably entering the OR sicker, but having better outcomes and avoiding these infections. So we could be talking about diabetes or whatever would have put patients at risk for infections, and those patients not developing those infections as expected. So kind of read these all the same way, and the same graphs are provided down here for the participant and STS scores as they were up above. Okay. And then we have, this is all cardiac surgeries process measures. So everything, all of the analyzed procedures that we have, they're all combined here. No real breakdown between CABG or ABR or MVR. Just everything's kind of all together, and same thing. Here you have your hospital, your mortalities. So you have your CABG in hospital and operative mortality. Remember, in hospital is from OR exit to death if they die in the hospital and not discharged home. Operative mortality is from OR exit to within 30 days. If they die in the hospital, they're included in this operative mortality, or if they get discharged home and they die within 30 days of procedure, they're also included in this operative mortality count. Eligible procedure, your odds ratio, where the site fell, better that this is, remember, STS is always going to be 1. Less than 1 is better, greater than 1 is worse. The site performed very well with their mortalities for all of these procedures. They're less than 1 in their odds ratio. Here's the site's 95% confidence interval percentile. You can see they're all fairly high. As the odds ratio goes up, the percentile is going to go down. And then the site's observed rate, the actual observed rate of occurrence. Some nice graph there. And you can see, right, the odds ratio of 1 is the STS, always 1. And you can see where the site falls. So for mitral valve repair operative mortality, they still performed better than the STS, just not as well as they did with their other procedures at the site level. What else do we have? And I think we're at time. We have a lot of questions, and I'm certain that we're not going to get through them. So we might have to save the questions for the next webinar. The risk adjusted and regional outcomes reports. And I don't know, Melinda or Melanie, are either of you able to stay on for a little bit longer?
No,
Stay
I
on a
actually have
little
to
bit
drop.
longer.
I
Okay,
have to
what's
drop,
that?
Carol. I have to
Okay.
drop.
No problem. Thanks, Melanie. Melinda, are you able to stay on for a little bit?
Yeah, I can stay
Okay.
on a little bit.
Okay. I'm just going to try to get through the next couple of reports here. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm going to probably just go through one of the couple of the outcomes here, maybe mortality and one of the complications. So this is your risk adjusted data summary report. This is where I chose that report, risk adjusted and regional outcomes. These are going to be the outcomes that we have risk models for. So not everything is provided under here, like blood usage or I don't think length of stay is going to be under here, but just your risk adjusted outcomes. And you'll see here, we just have the major risk adjusted outcomes. So, oh, we do have length of stay. I guess we do risk adjust those. Duh. Sorry. But anyway, first, the mortality risk adjustment in hospital, right? Those patients that die within the acute care stay, operative mortality, patients that die within the acute care stay or within 30 days of OR date if discharged prior to 30 days. You're going to have your odds ratio. Remember that STS is always going to be 1. Your O to E, STS will also be 1. This is your observed to expected. So how many times did something occur out of how many times was it expected? The average, right? What would we consider 2 stars or what we would consider performing as expected would be an O to E or observed to expected. It happened one time and it was expected one time of 1.0. So you have 0.88 is the site score in 2019. Let's look at 2021. 0.19, this is their O to E. It's much lower than the 1.0. They're doing really well here. Their like group, which is based upon a number of procedures performed, and if you're if you have a residency program or not, is how your like group is determined. They're much better than their like group. And their regional group is either going to be the state with that they are in, depending on the number of centers within their state, or it will be a region. So if you're in New Hampshire, you'll probably not be, your regional group will probably be based on the Northeast. I think it's the New England region, and not in just the state of New Hampshire, because there's few hospitals there to make a significant statistical analysis on those cases. So, but if you're in a larger city like New York, who just happens to be part of the New England region, you would be compared to New York because there's so many hospitals in New York that it's fair to make a comparison to just those hospitals within your state. The region is provided down here where it says region New York, number of participants in region 33, and number of cases of procedure, region procedure. So that information is provided down at the bottom of this page. You have your risk adjusted rate, which is your site's risk adjusted rate, and your observed rate. So for this site, their observed rate was 0.40. Their risk adjusted rate of in-hospital mortality is 0.36. This means that your, you could see here that their risk adjusted rate is lower than what their observed was, meaning that they were probably performing procedures on a little bit more difficult or sicker patients than what was expected. Operative mortality, major complications, all read the same way. And then you have your length of stays down here. Okay, so that's CABG. And then I'm going to do the benchmarked procedures for isolated CABG. I'm going to not go into anesthesia. We can review that next time. If you have questions, let me know. So this is the benchmarked report. This is going to show you the other variables that are used in determining that you're collecting. This will be built, hold on one second. This will be built similar to what the data collection form looks like. So you'll have, the different sections here. And I think it's loading. I don't know why there it goes. Different sections here. So this is just raw data. This is not going to be risk adjusted in any way. So the results are going to look a little bit different than in the risk adjusted report. We have preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative factors. Just to give you an idea, for age, mean, median, 25th percentile, 75th percentile. So the mean for this site in 2021 is 6.582. The median is 66. The 25th percentile, so down towards the bottom end or the lower end, is going to be 59. And the 75th percentile is 73. And then you can see number of greater than or equal to 65 was just over half of their patients were over 65 or older, 65 or older. And then you have the various graphs up here with and this defaults to age, but we're gonna, let's see, I'll show you a better one. Anyway, you can, if you click on something here, say you click on one of these boxes and you click see details, this takes a second to load, but this will populate with the patients that fall into that information. Okay, so let me go back here. I'm going to hit the benchmark buttons and let's go into postoperative information. Remember, blood products are going to be under the operative and postoperative. You'll have your intraoperative blood products under operative, postoperative, and total blood products under postoperative, right? So blood products use, this is postoperative, and then total blood products use, which include intra and post, are here. You can see just as we collected on the data collection form, what your site scores, what the like group is, what the STS is, and let's see, I want to do this. Oh, it's highlighting what let me see if I can get out of there. Clicked everywhere. I think I got out. And I don't know why this defaulted to 40,000, but we're going to scroll that down there. So this is the site's blood products used. This is the post-operative period. This is total blood products, intra and post. If you want to see the intra, you have to go back into the intra-operative section. You could see total blood products used. You have your STS, your site 2019, 2020, 2021. You have your like group and you have your STS group. So you can see where you're falling at in comparison to what's being done within your like groups or your the STS numbers. All right, I can see that this site's giving more blood than what's happening within STS on a national level and within their like groups. The other thing we can look at on this page is the morbidity and mortality section. All right, I'm looking at my complications. I'm doing better than any complications, but let's say I want to look at how many patients are returning to the OR for bleeding. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh, I don't know why it's not populating, but I can read it here that my site is 1.51, 1.36, 1.21. These are my last 3 years of data. And then the like group is 1.84, so I'm performing better here. And then STS 1.80. So I'm performing better than the like group and STS, even though I'm giving more blood, returning to the OR for bleeding less often. Okay, did I do okay? I know we're over, way over time here.
Amazing. That was great.
Okay, let's go to questions real quick here and see if we can knock some of these out. If folks want to stay on maybe 15 more minutes. Any known issues in the harvest report from Beth? I think the only known issue is that the beta blocker count in the isolated cabbage report under benchmarked is not excluding the contraindicated cases. So you're going to see those patients included. Actually, there's 2 issues that I'm aware of. You're going to see those patients included in the counts. However, in analysis, which is your risk adjusted regional outcomes and your NQF reporting and your quality ratings or your star ratings, those patients were properly excluded. And the other issue is that when DCRI sent back over the reports, the drill down function, I think it's, I can't remember exactly what Joe said, but let me see if I can pull up the slide here. They failed to, composite results failed to prescribe are displaying patient's record in the drill down, which should have been excluded. So there's patients who are showing up when you go to drill down that should not be included in that list, and they're actually not included in the counts that DCRI used to do analysis, but for some reason, DCRI included them in the patient records that got sent back, and so they were uploaded. But they are not impacting your composite results. It's just that they're showing up there even when they're not supposed to be. Those were the two issues that I know of. Are there any STS or IQVIA resources available that discuss which registry elements are most important to make our risk adjustments more accurate and weighted appropriately for morbidity or mortality? So Danette, I would highly suggest that you join the new data managers webinar if you're able to. I think it's on June 9th. We do have resources available that are the risk model. Yeah, this guy, the risk model variable chart. So I suggest looking at that. And then also the procedure identification chart and the risk model endpoint chart. I think these three with the risk model variable chart, the most important. You agree, Melinda? What do you think?
Yep, definitely.
Okay. How do we sign up for the new data managers call? There is no sign up required for it. We send data managers information weekly about the upcoming webinars for that week, usually on Monday or Tuesday. If you do not receive it, you can find more information here at sts.org, registries, STS National Database, and then view webinars. This is where all the recordings are. And I do not see the new data manager webinar posted here yet, but it will be posted here for June 9th. Probably after this user group call is over.
And the one we did in I think it was September is still posted under past webinars.
Oh, yeah.
I send that out to people all the time.
Yeah, here it is.
So you can listen to it and look at it there too.
Is there a place where the ODE ratio is listed in a chart in IQVIA? Not sure what you mean, Michael. Or the report. So the ODE, yeah, so I showed you the ODEs are listed in the risk adjusted and regional outcomes reports. No, post-op pneumonia hasn't been added yet. We're working with IQVIA on the participant dashboard, adding in a bunch more fields to be reported out, and we're still in the process of reviewing those with IQVIA. Does the new patch and risk calculator need to be completed before the submission? I don't know.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Sure.
For a roll-up star rating of 1 star without any 1-star ratings in the individual domains. For a roll-up star rating of 1 star without any 1-star ratings in the individual domains, what are some tips to presenting this difficult to leadership? I understand the statistical significance for individual endpoints versus multiple endpoints, but how would you explain this in layman's terms? Yeah, so I think probably what's going to be most helpful when you present that is not just this screen, but is presenting this screen. So essentially what happened, Anne, is that you have you perhaps have 2 or 3 stars for these individuals, but your overall, and probably more likely 2 stars, your overall is a 1 star. So my guess is that these, your 2-star ratings, which would mean that this red line falls within this darker blue box, is probably closer to the left-hand side here, right-hand side. So your right internal mammary. Oh, sorry, to the left-hand side. So this red line for your 2-star, I bet it's right on the border here or close to this edge. And that shows that you were very close to receiving a 1 star in that domain. I'm sorry, in that domain. So look at this one. If this red line was over here to the left of this dark blue box, you're closer to receiving a 1 star than you would be receiving a 3 star. So I would probably explain it using this box and using these graphs to show them that even though you were 2 stars, you were closer to the 1-star end of that 2-star rating.
You know what else, Carol, I find helpful because my brain is fairly simple, but I think that the important thing is you have to realize it's not just your rating. You're being rated against everybody else. So if everybody else is doing really, really good and better than you, then your stars are going to be lower because you're rated based on what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, and the difficulty of the cases at everybody else's sites.
Exactly. So I think that's the hardest thing. But and I tell people, because I get questions like this all the time, and I just say, hey, you got to realize it's not just you they're looking at everybody else. And so if everybody else is doing really, really good or not doing really good, well, you're not going to get a 3 stars, right? The
Yeah,
other thing to remember is 3 stars is very, very hard to get, especially overall. Some of um, the categories you can get them, but overall it's really hard, and only there's not that many. And it all has to do on statistics, which I know everybody loves, but basically, but it really has to do with how everybody else is doing. So it's very difficult to explain this to leadership, but that's the gist of it in a nutshell. In my mind, that's how I wrap it around it.
I think
If
that's
that
really
if that
helpful.
helps. I don't know
Yeah,
if
it's
that
really
helps.
helpful. Okay, so we did that. Oh, Cindy. So is the virtual port, thanks, Melinda. So is the virtual portion of AQO is the same as purchasing the recordings and slides pre-COVID? It's going to be done a little bit differently. We're still working that out. More information to come for how we're going to do the virtual aspect of AQO. Have notifications been sent out for the audit yet? No, not yet. They should be coming soon, hopefully the end of the month, by the end of the month, and they'll be coming via email. What can we do if we have an MVR? If we have an MVR was not included in the star ratings? Hannah, you might want to, huh?
My first question is it really an MVR? Is it really an
Yeah.
isolated MVR? That's really, I'm wondering.
Yeah, send it. You could send, Hannah, you can send it over to Melinda and myself, and we can look at it with you using the procedure identification chart to make sure it really should be included in the mitral valve group. STS cardiac patch update. I'm not sure of the question, Deb. 4.20.2 went live July of 2020, and the risk calculator was updated shortly thereafter. I apologize, I'm just not following the question.
I wonder if it's a patch related to our vendor software.
That's what I'm thinking. It's a patch
Oh.
update for her software, I'm suspecting.
Oh, so maybe reach out to the vendor if that was your question, is looking at your vendor software. I don't have information on that. Are the IQVIA complications reports still using the denominator of only the cases with complications, or was that a change? It's still using the only cases with the complications, but you could get your total denominator from the case count. Remember, so you could do it yourself for right now. As you're looking at them, use the number of cases, which is the first row. Let's see if I can pull it up here quickly, which is the first row. We are going to update it. It just hasn't been done yet. I'm waiting for a call with the surgeons to review this further. They're actually putting a working group together. I don't know if it's here or not. I'd have to look and see, but I know on the participant dashboard, it was using just the just those that had a complication as the denominator. In the harvest report, what is included in all procedures risk adjusted data summary? It's all of the procedures that have a risk model. So the valve procedures, cabbage, and I'll show you. Oops, hold on. It's going to be these, the cabbage, AVR cabbage, MVR repair replacement, MV repair replacement plus cabbage make up the all cardiac procedures counts. It does not include other cardiac procedures, but we can't risk adjust those because we don't have risk models. What about a case where the chronic kidney disease, but creatinine is less than 4, dialyzed once prior to surgery and had a post-op dialysis treatment?
That case would have to be looked at on an individual basis. You'd have to send that in, and I'd have to see some consult notes and everything that's going on with that patient.
Okay. So, and then this one's from Elizabeth. So the 0.5 increase only matters when the peak, when the pre-op is greater than 4. Is that correct?
When the peak. So if you have,
She meant pre-op.
yeah,
Down there below, she said pre-op.
I guess. So basically what it's saying is if you have one of the indicators of post-op renal failure is you have a post-op creatinine, peak creatinine of greater than 4 with at least a 0.5 rise. So what does that mean? Okay, so for example, here's a good example. Let's say your pre-creatinine was 3.7. That's pretty high for a pre, right? But it's not 4. So it's 3.7. And your post peak was 4.1. So if you take the 3.7 and you add 0.5, you get 4.2. That would be renal failure. 4.1 would not be renal failure because it did not go up 0.5 from the pre-op. I hope that.
Yeah, I think that
clarified.
makes sense. I think that's helpful, Melinda. I hope it helps. It helped me. You almost helped me. I don't know if it was helpful to Elizabeth or not, but okay. If this is a good one. If a patient is I don't know if you want to answer this now or if Susan should submit it to the FAQ. A patient with a type A dissection
Yeah,
extending.
that looks it looks pretty complicated, Susan.
Yeah,
I
and
think
that's
maybe
a serious
I'd want to
dissection.
see that. I'd want to see that scan without identifiers, and then let's do that in the FAQ. I might get myself in trouble answering that one on here.
Don't get Melinda in trouble, Susan. All right. Please elaborate on how to capture previous cardiac stenosis. And I think Tiffany, this probably should also be submitted.
No, this one I can do. It's pretty easy.
Oh, you
I read
can.
this
Okay.
one.
All right.
Okay.
Please elaborate on how to capture previous cardiac stenosis. Example, current left heart cath shows significant stenosis in the LAD, but prior stent placed in the RCA is patent with no stenosis. Would you capture this as 2 vessel disease and mark the RCA distribution as greater than 50%? Would you mark the RCA distribution greater than 50% as no, leave it blank, or something else altogether?
Okay, so for 1170, which is the number of disease vessels, it's going to be 2 because you have stenosis in your LAD and you have a patent stent. So your RCA has been stented. So once disease, always disease. So that's 1170, 2 vessel. When you get down to the grid where you're talking about the current stenosis going into surgery, the RCA would be answered as no because it's not greater than 50%.
Great.
Because the stent's open.
Thank you, Melinda. Does the analytics do anything for the missing pre-op creatinine value? I think if they do anything, they set it to a normal value. I'd
Yeah.
have to look. I think there's a list of what's imputed, and it might be in the report overview.
It
I'd
might
have to,
be there.
yeah, I'd have to check into that further. But if they do anything, they set it to a normal value.
But if they set it to a normal value, they're
Just for analysis.
for
not-
analysis. So
Yeah.
but would that trigger? But that wouldn't trigger
No.
like an inconsistency or anything for renal failure, would it?
No, because it's done on the back end. It's not part of the
Yeah.
coding. It's part of the analysis. So when they have to, if they have to have a value to determine what the coefficient is to apply it to the patient for the variable of renal failure that's used in the model.
Right. That's what
So
I thought.
they just make up they make up a value, and the value they make up is a normal, what would be considered normal. So we answered no to post-op renal failure if pre-op renal failure creatinine is 4 or greater and no dialysis post-op. Yes, that's correct. And you would still answer no even if that patient did have dialysis post-op. So if the pre-op creatinine is 4 or greater, that automatically excludes the patient from developing new post-op renal failure because they technically had renal failure pre-operatively and therefore cannot develop new renal failure. It doesn't
Yes.
matter if they have to have dialysis post-op.
But we don't mark this as pre-op renal failure because our definition says the patient has to be undergoing dialysis. So you won't mark it as pre-op renal failure, but that's okay because on the back end, the creatinine is greater than 4 or equal to 4, it'll be excluded from the metric.
And then just read the FAQ from July to clarify, and it has to be greater or equal to 4, not just the 0.5 milligram per deciliter rise, correct? And yes,
Correct.
that's correct. If the patient has a pre-op creatinine of 0.3, peak post-creatinine of 0.9, would you document renal failure even though the peak creatinine was in the normal range?
It meets the definition for renal failure.
Correct. When lysis of it,
times.
yeah, we've brought those very same questions to the surgeons, and we still code renal failure for those cases with low creatinine. When lysis of adhesion is performed with a procedure, is it recorded in 6545 other non-cardiac, or is it not reported?
Most often it's not reported that they're just lysing adhesions to get to the operative space that they need to get to. So it's just part of the procedure.
Thank you. Just checking, the renal failure patient not on dialysis requires dialysis post-op and after discharge. We do not code at all, not newly required or required post-discharge.
Well, renal failure, I'm assuming you're talking about a patient that has a creatinine of 4 or greater pre-op, not on dialysis. Post-op requires dialysis. You know that patient is excluded from the metric. In the training manual, it says do not mark this as renal failure post-op because those patients are automatically excluded from the metric. So you would answer no to renal failure post-op in that particular patient.
Thank you. Is there any preference between a point of care or a lab, a full metabolic lab with creatinine and albumin, et cetera, within 30 days, then a point of care testing with creatinine only prior to OR? Which creatinine would be used?
Use the closest one to OR entry prior to anesthetic management if that's done in the holding area or whatever. It doesn't matter if it's a POC or a basic lab, whichever one's the closest and fits the criteria in the training manual.
If the patient has CHF post-op, where is that recorded?
We don't capture that as a post-op event.
Can you please go over the last renal failure question again? I'm glad you did renal failure, Melinda. Look at it. Seems like it was very hot topic.
It always is, yes. Okay, so if the pre-op creatinine is 0.76 and the highest post-op creatinine was 2.58, but on discharge, the creatinine returned to almost normal at 0.78, does this count as post-op renal failure? So I'm going to calculate this right quick in case I made a typo. Maybe that's what.
I don't think you did.
Well, I might have. I didn't. So 0.76 times 3 is 2.28. So that's greater. 2.28. So 2.58 is greater than 2.28. So this is a 3-time increase. So that would be renal failure. The key to this one is that we look at the post peak creatinine. Okay, the highest creatinine post-op, not the discharge creatinine post-op when we are determining renal failure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Question. In Florida, we have a lot of patients that come from outside of the states. Is there any consideration for adding multiple attempts to contact a patient without it counting against the ability for a site to receive a star rating? I can tell you that the answer to that is no, and you're going to, whatever steps you need to put into place, if you need to obtain multiple contacts, you need to get the contact information for a physician that cares for that patient out of the United States before you agree to do surgery on them, or whatever the information is that you need to get the status of those patients post-operatively. I highly recommend that you start implementing something to do that. I know everybody works really hard to get the 30-day mortality status on patients, but we are not making any changes to the rules where you would be allowed to not where you would be allowed to have greater than 2% missing or unknown for these patients and still receive a star rating. So
Yeah, and I think the key here, Carol, is that the surgeons really, really feel strongly about this.
yeah, very strongly.
And this is
Yeah,
a
it's not
surgeon.
me or Melinda.
Yeah, it's the
So-
surgeons, and I've heard them say if a surgeon operates on somebody, he should know what happens to the patient at 30 days. Okay, so there won't be any change because the surgeon leadership of the database feels so strongly about it, and they also feel that it's a surgeon's role to know what happened to their patient at 30 days. If that helps, Charla, to ease the pain a little bit, it's or talk to your surgeons about it a little bit.
Yeah, it helps, I think. Okay, this question is, there's no line item for post-op unplanned coronary artery intervention in the data summary for isolated CAP. And I wanted to double check that.
I think that's one of the ones we're adding, isn't it?
I think it is too, yeah, because in 2.9, we had re-up for graft occlusion was the field, and it actually needed to be changed. So it will be updated in the report. I think it's on the plate to be updated in there. I do not see this on the known issues PDF. Charlotte, if you could please send me an email so we can pass it, or actually, if you could submit this into the STS tech support at IQVIA.com. That's the email for STS, for IQVIA support. It's STS tech support at IQVIA.com. They'll be able to add this to the list so we can get it added. Oh, I see you already have a ticket number. Per STS, our only primary data manager can request IQVIA access for a person. This creates a delay when the primary data manager is out ill or on vacation. Is there a process by which a backup data manager can get access in these situations so there's not a delay? Bonnie, your best bet here is to please reach out to Addie Dolan and with this request. You could actually reach out to STSDB at sts.org. Let's see if I can put it in the chat box.
I got it, Carol.
Okay, thanks, Leanne. With that request. To obtain a star rating, a facility has to meet, oh yeah, I was a little confused on your question, Victoria, so I'm going to read it slowly here. To obtain a star rating, the facility has to meet a 2%, and don't listen to this part, everybody, because I don't think it's correct. A 5% threshold for mortality, medications, internal memory use within the 12 and 36-month time frame. So what actually, Victoria, the thresholds are 2% or less for the mortality fields. There's an NQF limitation, which I believe it's either 5 or 10%. More information is in the report overview.
5 for medication.
5% for medications and for internal mammary use. And the time frame is, we look at the 3 12-month periods that make up the 36-month time frame. And does IQVIA have any reports that can be used to predict whether or not the last 36 months of my data are meeting? So the best bet for where you should look for this, and what I suggest is, I think the participant dashboard is probably going to be your best bet. I would set your time periods to a year. So this next report is going to be through March 31st of 2022. And remember, you have to do the first date. So I would start with the April 1st of 2021 to the April 1st of 2021 through March 31st of 2022. And then I would select, do your isolated cabbage this way. And when it populates, you'll see missing and unknown come up for those specific variables. So that's where you'll need to look at it. Remember, it's applied to each of those medication and internal mammary variables, and then the 3 mortality fields. And we've gone through that on previous reports, previous webinars. I think one was done in January. If you want to go back and review that.
Well, and I think the key is it's per year, Victoria. So you need to look each year and make sure it's less than 2% for each year. Okay, that's the key. Because a lot of people, have had a lot of questions about that.
Yeah,
Some
each
people-
12-month, the 3 12-month periods and the 36-month time frame. So if it's March, so you have to look at the 8 months in 2021 9 months in 2021 and the 3 months in 2022 together to make up that last 12-month time frame, and then go back for the other 2. When is the, there was a webinar that we did that went over that. I think would be pretty helpful.
A couple months ago,
Okay.
I think it was, I can't remember exactly, but
That's okay. No, we are not looking at getting rid of the internal memory usage at this time. Is there a minimum total program volume content that is needed for star rating in any of the main domains? Yes, there is, and it's in the national report overview. So please check that out, and it's specific for CABG, AVR, and the mitral valve plus CABG, AVR plus CABG. Do procedures that fall into an other, not an isolated category, ever get factored into the composite rating or any section in the report? They do not get included in any of the outcomes reports, other than, hold on, I think it's,
that all cardiac surgery.
yeah,
they fall
well,
into that.
I'll show you. Yeah, I think it's under the benchmarked report. They are not thinking of replacing the internal memory star rating. They do not want to discourage the use of internal memory usage by getting rid of the NQF measure for that. Intra-op antibiotics are not used in the star ratings. So this all cardiac surgery process measures. I think that this is all of the, I don't think that this is, well, I don't know. I guess I'd have to check into this further to see what goes into all cardiac surgeries. It could very well could be all of your analyzed and non-analyzed, but I would need to check into that further. It's not used in any of the ratings though, or your risk adjusted outcomes. And the all is going to be all of your risk adjusted cases. Are intra-op antibiotics used in star ratings? They are not, Dia. Please define the STS score on the STS overall composite report. It's the STS score. The average with the STS, the you didn't
Like
say
that.
average score?
Yeah, I think it's the average score of all the STS participants.
Which report did you say we could find the information about the internal memory rating trend? We do not have an internal, I don't think it's there. Oh, it is here.
Yeah.
I forgot it was all the domains that go into the composite. So this is all the domains that go into the CABG composite. But just be careful that you pay attention to the dates at the top. They're not in order, and IQVIA is working on it. Will there ever be a time that the screen will include both the star rating and the graphs without scrolling back and forth? I don't know, Barbara. Maybe. I'm not sure. Do you mean this page so you don't have to scroll up and down? Sorry, I'm not following on that one. No, we're not adding the names to the dream. If you're meaning patient names, we're not adding the patient names to the drill downs. We provide the record number, so you'll have to look it up. We do not want to, we were trying hard not to provide patient identifiers on the reports. When exporting the report, not all the data is seen. Please submit this to the STS tech support at IQVIA.com so they can look into that for you.
I've already got a tracking number for that one, Carol.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think we're going to have to stop here, Melinda. We're already 40 minutes over, and I know I want to be respectful of everybody's time.
Yeah.
I did answer Heidi's question regarding the audit. And I said that we haven't sent out notification yet. It will be sent out via email.
We may just need to do another workshop on this.
Yeah, we can do it again. I just want to see if there's any. I think we're going to have to stop here. Yeah, I'm really sorry, everybody. It was a long call. We're 40 minutes over. And if there's questions here that you need Melinda or myself to answer, please email us or submit a FAQ into the clinical mailbox for Melinda. But be patient, because remember, it's harvest closed and everybody else is submitting their questions too. So thanks again for joining. Thanks, Leanne. Thanks, Leanne. And thanks for everybody staying on. Have a great day.
No problem. Have a great day. Great call, Carol. Good
Thank
job,
you.
Melinda.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Bye.
Chat, guys.